Ladies and gentlemen, I have some issues to bring up, as I've no doubt you are expecting me to, but I also have an apology to make to Blizzard. I will always call a spade, and as much as I've had such giant Twitter and stream discussions with people about 8.1, the fact of the matter is, I never have to lie to you guys. I'm a demonetized channel. It's as simple as that. I'm not supported by YouTube directly. I'm supported by you guys. And that just means I can be free and honest. And I have to apologize to Blizzard. So I'm going to start with that. Because in my video last week where we looked at the objective, what I found objectively worse from Legion going into BFA, that I found hard, difficult, almost impossible to understand why certain decisions were made. Part of what I discussed in that video was the lack of world quests for PvP and the lack of encouragement for war mode, which could have been the saving grace of Battle for Azeroth. And in that video, I talked about encouraging people to PvP in the Outer World because it was great when the expansion started. We had all this information that this was a good thing. And also encouraging Blizzard, or hoping Blizzard would have thought, okay, typically in World PvP what happens is you're on one side of overwhelming odds. You're either dominating one side or you're being beaten to a pulp. We need to find a way to address that in a fun and interesting manner so that people will go out there and not just do their quest and move on. Now, that's my issue with the World Quest basic system. The idea of PvP in a World Quest system is you do your quest and then you generally move on. There's no reason to stick around. It's not great honor, and also the odds tend to shift backwards and forwards. And over time, that's the way it is. You can suddenly be surrounded by 40 people, then they all leave group and the server phases them out. And then suddenly you're surrounded by 40 alliance, or vice versa. And it's not a very encouraging system for long-term fun gameplay. So I discussed things like, why are there no catapults? Why are there no extra outposts? Why are there no things like bombing runs? Things like that that can help you tip the tide of the battle while having fun. And the unfortunate truth is, as much as we look around at modern day titles, and we see all these things that I'm describing happening seamlessly, our game is old. It's really, really old. And while being out in this open world PvP environment for the last couple of hours and trying to fish through this idea in my head, it became very apparent with the sheer quantity of lag that is caused by not even large-scale PvP. This isn't large-scale PvP considering this player base. It's not at all. And the servers just can't handle it. The game just can't handle it. It can't handle much of anything going on, honestly. Compared to modern titles, doesn't take much to actually slow WoW down to a crawl and make it just not fun to play. And that's the grim reality I've no doubt the devs have discussed. Yes, it would be nice if we could do all these things. They're very cool ideas. It would be cool if we could make it even better. We could have giant tree elementals stomping the battlefield. People could ride them. We have the technology to make multiple ridden mounts. Giant dinosaurs, which we know exist in this game, and we could do things like that with people managing to get some extra buffs while they deal with overwhelming odds in a fun and interesting way. The problem we have is the game just can't handle it. And that's the reality. And for forgetting that, I guess, because we do live in such a closed off, phased world now. It's become the norm for the last few years. And I despise it. I really do. And I'm not going to deny that. I dislike it. There's like 8 people in my main city on a heavily populated realm. I much preferred the classic experience, even though that had some sharding going on. I don't like it. But seemingly it's a solution to a problem the game obviously has, is that it simply cannot handle just too much going on. And that's the nature of the beast. Like it or not, this game is 13, 14 years old. And it is not something you can compare to Battlefield 5 or Call of Duty or any of the, you know, any online multiplayer action game, whether it be Fortnite or PUBG, where even the slight hitbox miss or tracking can cause you absolute fury and anger. And for that, I apologize. On the other side of the coin, though, 8.1 has a lot of issues. Not to mention the announcement of the new store mounts. Ill-timed is the word I would use, because no doubt this store mount has been planned for a really long time, well before 8.1 was due to come out. It's probably been made for months, and the marketing's been sorted and all those kind of things. Given the response in the last couple of days to 8.1, I probably would have held back on that, as it's only going to throw more fuel on the fire for the guys who think BFA is a dead game or very much on life support, given the response and the sheer quantity of people who are unsubbing. And again, we have no hard statistics because Blizzard doesn't reveal it, but we can only go off what people are saying, and they may all be lying. They may all be lying, but it certainly doesn't seem so when what I'm seeing actually in-game and out-of-game with the sheer amount of people. And the shift in voices has actually been a big one for me. The shift in voices on the WoW realm, on the WoW official forums, which you can only use an active account to post on, that has been very apparent over the last couple of months, where the outraged were there. They were there and in force. And over the last couple of months, those voices have dwindled away. And it's not because BFA is doing well. I mean, I take that, and maybe I'm being pessimistic here, I take that as a clear indication that those guys have left. They've gone. And I can talk to my stream, who are long-time hardcore WoW players who are unsubbed. They just don't play the game anymore. It's as simple as that. And that's what happens, is things seem brighter in certain environments because the players who were angry have gone. And you end up with a sort of circular argument and a bit of a bubble forming. But again, it's hearsay at best. We don't know the official numbers. So I wouldn't like to speculate. But it certainly feels that way. Certainly feels that way. The big topic of conversation for around 8.1, certainly if you were following my Twitter and saw the rant and obviously our response to the Warcraft devs, again, has come down to communication. 8.1 is once again demonstrating Blizzard's seeming policy at this point. And I have to say that because it is so repeated and it is always the same way that it does feel like now this is the policy. And the policy I'm talking about is official outlets where they use their YouTube channel and they use official blue stickies and patch notes and things like that are nearly entirely skewed to the positive. Anything that's great, or they think is great, that they're bringing in. New islands, new war campaigns, all this kind of stuff, incursions, all the new content we did get with 8.1, that's all included in official channels. They made that survival guide, which was obviously heavily attacked because people didn't want that content. But it is still the new shiny content Blizzard is creating. That's the stuff that ends up in the official channels. The stuff that is going to be in front of the most eyeballs for their player base. Stuff they can put on the launcher, right? For everything that can work that way. The negative stuff, the stuff they feel is going to get a bad reception, is not mentioned at all, which is something that we've seen a lot of times. The most prominent, despite the huge amount of them, and there is a huge amount of them, you should well know if you've been following my channel, the last one, of course, that I think was the most egregious was the Mythic Plus cash change, where they were sponsoring guides, information, websites. They were actively supporting people to go and check this out. That was all full of information that was well on the PTR and in the beta for Battle for Azeroth of how the Mythic Plus cash system is supposed to work. And then they waited until the day we actually got them to reveal that, nope, it wasn't going to work that way, and they've changed our minds. And then the whole system started to crumble because it was like, hang on a minute. Now we're either in a situation where we desperately need things from the Mythic Plus cash, or we have so much of it, it's useless to us. What's happening here? This system doesn't work this way because you designed it around a different system. And you can't just switch one part of that off and expect the system to hold up. And that is exactly what has happened with the changes to the Mythic Plus cache. This time around, of course, it's the artifact knowledge. They have stalled artifact knowledge. It's still going on the PTR, by the way. For those of you who think that maybe we missed it or it was just something that flew under the radar, no, it's still continuing as of now on the 8.1 PTR, which is still live. They must have decided this relatively recently, or just never bothered, or intentionally, depending on how dark you want to get with this. They either forgot to turn it off on the PTR, or they intentionally left it on so that an outroar or an uproar or an outrage wouldn't exist. Either way is entirely possible. So if you don't know, artifact knowledge, which is the multiplier you gain from artifact power in order to make the later levels easier and allow for catch-up, has been stopped. And this is a huge deal for a plenty of players, because I've had a lot of people coming to me saying, I don't understand why it's bad. Again, I refer to the video we did last week, where I discussed this disconnect, and there's a massive disconnect amongst the player base regarding artifact power, depending on which level of the game you play. Either artifact power is meaningless, because your gear just simply isn't that high. You're not getting 385 Azerite, and therefore you unlock everything pretty quickly. Or You are in the 385 world, and as somebody who acquires 385 gear extremely early into a raid tier, because that's how you play, and the new raid tier is coming. Therefore, it's not a case of just unlocking 385 gear, it's also preparation for the next raid tier where we're going to have to regrind the exact same traits that we already have. That is the realistic situation. You might recall we said they know it's a problem, but that's just a part of life. That's the way it's going to be. So with that sadness in mind, it was never revealed, never communicated, never announced in any way, shape or form. As I said, it's still live in the PTR that they were going to stop artifact knowledge. Now, here's the thing with this. And I was furious at Blizzard for this. It makes sense. It does. It does make sense. It totally makes sense. You might recall in the same video, I talked about how Blizzard was obviously having to stretch the amount of AP levels needed across the spectrum of gear levels for Azerite. So that would be everything from World Quests all the way up to Mythic. And the problem is, some players can't be arsed with it. Certainly if you're in lower gear, you don't need to grind any AP. So you stopped doing your World Quest. There was no reputation to be had. The Paragon levels don't contain mounts. You don't really care for battle pets. Whatever it might be, people stopped grinding World Quests because they're just not that interesting. And frankly, I outgear them so much, even at a casual level, that I don't need to. I'm not getting any gear rewards. I don't need war resources, and I don't need artifact power. Why the hell would I go and do World Quests, right? And if you didn't like islands, then your AP increases practically ground to a halt. And they may have ground to a halt very early on. I would be interested to see if some people stopped around like 29. Something like that. Like, why would I bother farming AP? I have enough. On the similar token, the Mythic Raiders are really high, and they need levels like 48 in order to get their gear working. And therefore, for them, the AP grind is very real. So in order, Blizzard's obviously got this problem. One, we can't have the most casual players acquiring items in the new raid tier that don't work, because that's terrible. Now you've got a bunch of players who are maybe bread and butter of the casual player base, and they're running around in items that are entirely grayed out. Can't have that. At the same time, Blizzard really, really wants the AP system to matter in some respect. So they have to balance around the fact that some people are grinding the shit out of World Quests every single day. And therefore their numbers, their levels are way, way higher. And they need them to chase a carrot in the next raid tier, otherwise the system just flat out doesn't work. So they've done that by stretching out the requirements. If you have higher gear, you're going to need way, way more than you're going to need if you're getting lowby gear. And the spread seems to be getting bigger. Stalling AK now actually makes sense, because it stops that inflation. It puts a hold on it. People can't grind AP realistically past a certain point without doing obscene amounts of content for very little. Right? So you're talking about grinding out endless islands for a pittance of artifact power over and over and over and over again. And most players just aren't going to do that. It has very clear... excuse me. It has very clear diminishing returns. Whereas AK is really beneficial for the lesser and more profitable content you do, which means they've now got to a level where every player should relatively easily be able to unlock all their Azerite traits, and there is no need to keep increasing artifact knowledge. Therefore, stalling it makes total sense. It does. The problem is their concealing of this information. A lot of people compare it to Legion and saying you should have expected it. I have no other words for that other than basically victim blaming. And you might say I'm being outrageous there, but hear me out on this. Comparing it to Legion is a little ridiculous, and the reason for that is simple. We knew about the artifact knowledge cap the day Legion came out. We knew about it before Legion actually launched. They were very open about the system. We knew it. We knew when it was going to finish. We knew how many we were going to get, and it all made sense. On top of that, we don't lose anything with the Legion system. We do with this system. If you don't grind your ass off right now, certainly if you're in the upper echelons of the player base, then you're going to be getting gear which doesn't have traits that you already have right now. That's a big problem. Combine that with the fact that they never announced it in any way, shape or form, and guilds across the world had put in tons, and I've got this because our guild did it, as much as any other guild did this, where the guys sat down and they got the spreadsheets going and they worked out for everybody the minimum you needed to do to hit the relevant targets for the next raid tier. And the reason they did that is because, of course, players just don't really enjoy doing world quests over and over again. And you don't want to burn your players out. So for months, while this PTR was up. And I want to remind you, the 8.1 PTR was up since September. It's been up for ages. They've had BlizzCon with a What's Next panel where all this information should have been shared. In all that time, not a single mention of it until the game actually went live, or the patch went live, I should say. These guys have put in hours and hours of work, mathematically calculating, along with the multipliers, the minimum players needed to do to avoid players burning out. Because the last thing a Mythic Raid team or a High Mythic Plus team, or even if you just want to be able to use your armor when it drops, which seems to be something that a lot of players who are still playing the game don't understand why you would like that. I mean, we have people who literally don't understand why some players would like all their armor to work that they worked to get, which is baffling. Baffling in my eyes. Regardless, they all worked out the bare minimum, so they could go to their raiders or their players or their friends and say, look, if we just do like our emissaries and like islands and warfronts and things like that, we're going to hit where we need to be, so we don't need to worry about it. It's totally fine. We can do that. And that's cool because that's not too much pressure. And then we all log in to find out that that's not true. And in fact, we're going to have to reevaluate the whole goddamn system because now there's a huge amount of grinding that's required. An absolutely enormous amount of requiring over the next few weeks. And that's put off the grumbles and groans and the I can't be arsed that we're hearing across the board, at least in the circles I travel in, is really sad. I mean, this is cost subs again. Purely because of lack of communication. Now, as I said at the start of this, I totally understand why you're doing it. I totally do. And honestly, this should have been announced before BFA even came out. Hey, by the way, we're going to have artifact knowledge in BFA. It's going to keep rising until we hit a point where we feel that most players, if not every player, can unlock all their Azerite armor with not much effort. So that people can level alts, and you can get your gear, and you can catch up, and you can get it all done and sorted. When that point is, we'll let you know a couple of weeks in advance. But that's how it's going to work. And when we feel we've hit that point, we're going to stall it until the next raid tier, and then we're going to continue the system again. This is to prevent inflation and people getting too far apart in terms of their artifact level, their artifact levels over the course of the expansion. Okay, that makes total sense to me. Let me know that before BFA, and then a couple of weeks ago or a month ago or when the PTR went live, just let people know. By the way, on this date, when the patch comes out, we're going to be stalling AK. That's all it takes. That's literally it. And I've seen, I had an interesting conversation with someone who was like, I just don't understand this hate train. You're hating for no reason. It's like, we're not hating for no reason. This lack of communication is absurd. And I want to remind you that it was only 2 months ago that law specifically said communication was a top priority for Blizzard right now. They have said that 2 years ago as well. And it seemingly is just not the case. They seem to definitely want to be concealing things. Or, in the case of this, maybe they decided to do it last minute. Maybe it was videos like mine who are pointing out that, yes, we can see what you're doing. You're stretching gear levels out in order to try and match the ever-increasing amounts of AP levels and the spread of AP levels across the board. Maybe it was always intended. Who knows? But with the lack of information and the lack of communication, we're all guessing. And if you're angry at Blizzard right now, of course you're going to, similar to the Storm Mount, you're going to add fuel to the fire. On the same note, recently, players logged in to find out that some of their gear was no longer working. Again, no prior announcement, no communication. Was not a feature on the PTR that we were aware of. If you're not sure what I'm talking about, crafted items in BFA didn't require the profession in order to wear them. And that's been something that's been in the round the game for a really long time. That actually used to be the main way of people getting gear. Was to, if you can't get it to drop, or that's not part of your content, an alternative route was to grind the gold, or grind a profession, and then you could craft it. Or you could buy it off the auction house, or you could do whatever you wanted to do, because that's what crafting should be about in an RPG. It's not just for you. You are learning to build items. Why the fuck can I not build a pair of pants that I could give to someone else? It makes no sense. Okay. So that's how it worked. So plenty of people leveled up professions. They did the raids. They got their resources, be it sanguicells or whatever, and plenty of them at the start. I'm not talking about now, but plenty of them in order to build their 385 pants. They can't Warforge, they can't Titan Forge, they can't get gem slots. Okay, so there are plenty of greater loot out there, plenty of greater options, and perhaps because of the RNG nature of crafting the items, You simply wouldn't get the one you wanted, but it had a decent item level regardless. So ideal, not really. In most cases, not the ideal pants, the ideal braces, the ideal gloves. Plenty of opportunity for upgrades still left in the game. And then they left that profession behind because it can't go any further until the next raid tier. I'm going to pick up another profession which is more beneficial to me. Something like herbalism because of the price of potions or whatever. With no prior communication and no prior warning, Blizzard decides that they're going to change that system. We're going to make it so you need the profession. So put yourself in these shoes, because I think you need to see things from other people's perspective. Perhaps you're at work all day. You're grinding your ass off IRL. You're working like a motherfucker. You have a load of responsibilities when you come home. Perhaps you've got kids. Perhaps you need to make sure homework's done. Perhaps you need to do all these things. But you're quite happy on this Wednesday or the Tuesday, depending on if you're US or EU. You're quite happy that today is raid night. It's a brand new patch. Maybe you've been playing a Shadow Priest, you've been left in the shit for a long time, and you kind of think 8.1 is going to be your time to shine. And you're really happy that tonight you can go into your raid pretty confident that you can put some good results out there, some nice buffs that you've been waiting for since pre-BFA came out. This is your moment. And you come home. And you've been working your fucking ass off. You dive in the shower, you have your dinner, you give your wife a kiss, you give your fucking kids a hug and a cuddle, and you say, all right, you know tonight's raid night, so I'm going to go and do my raid. And your wife's like, cool, enjoy yourself, have fun. And you log in and your fucking gear doesn't work. Great. Why? Why would you do that to those guys? Because I think a lot of people, especially younger guys who maybe can log in during the day, even people like myself, you don't see it from that point of view. But I wasn't always doing this job. There were plenty of times that I was grinding 9 hours a day IRL, really looking forward to coming home and getting my raid on. And I had to rush home, I had to have my dinner, I had to do all the stuff I needed to do so I could sit down for a few hours and do my raid. And to log in and find that my items no longer work, well, that's just the biggest kick in the balls of all time. And do Blizzard give a fuck about those guys? Plenty of older people play World of Warcraft. Plenty. And not everybody's a streamer or a YouTuber. Let's put it in that perspective. Anyway, alright, this is the situation Blizzard's put us in. What are you going to do about it? Well, a lot of people threw tens of thousands of gold at correcting the situation all across the world. I need to get my armor working. I've got to drop the profession that I've leveled up, I've done stuff with, that I was using for most of the expansion that wasn't crafting. I've got to pick up my old profession again, and I might need to grind that back up as well, because obviously I'm going to need it next raid tier. Anyway, I can tell you that on my server, the price of materials for professions was huge. Okay, my legs are working again. Good God, I had to pay extortionate rates in order to get my gear working in the 20 minutes or half an hour or an hour I had before the raid. I just had to fork out all my gold, or a stupid amount of gold, because, as I said on my server, people were making money hand over fist on patch day because of this profession change. And then 24 hours later, Blizzard says they're going to change their mind on it. Just what the hell is going on? What is going on? If this is something you wanted to implement for the next raid tier, which isn't out, by the way, then let people know. Hey, next raid tier, we're going to make it so we need your professions. Why? Doesn't matter. This is what we've decided. As I explained earlier, doesn't really make sense. I don't know why I can't hand somebody a pair of cloth pants. Apparently, I'm not allowed to. But either way, next raid tier, we're not going to allow you to do this anymore. All right, cool. That gives me like 6 weeks of time to sort this situation out and decide what I want to do. All right, that makes common sense. So why in the fuck? Why? In God's name, do you automatically switch it off and then go oopsie 2 days later as if you weren't aware of this issue 5 minutes after the patch went live? You wait until the people who were really affected by it, had obviously wasted a ton of resources in order to correct the issue, and then you decided to change it. Unbelievable. Disgraceful. Absolutely terrible performance. And it's wrong. And that's the big thing. It's wrong. It shouldn't be how this game is run. With the quantity of money and players that it has, it's not the way it should be done. It's terrible. On top of that, we've also seen the removal of portals. Now, we know large portal rooms are coming to the game, but they're not here now. So they just randomly decided to remove the portals. It's actually gotten so bad that if you go to the WoW subreddit, they've managed to put together a mega thread of the sheer quantity of uncommunicated changes to the game. And nearly all of them Nearly, because apparently the planking Borealis is a very big positive. I'm memeing because that seems to be the thing, the only good sign I've seen. Have to make a mega thread of all the unannounced changes. This is not what Blizzard was about. It is not, and I repeat, and this was my final word on this in the conversations I had, it is absolutely not the responsibility of the players when the game is patched to go out and hunt for the changes and then go to the Warcraft devs, usually on Twitter, in order to find out whether this is normal, a bug, or whatever. We know Wowhead was scrambling to find out about AK and found that in the files it still seems to be working. Yet on live it wasn't, and perhaps it's coming back next week. And then on Twitter we revealed that a fundamental backbone of the AP system is actually going to work this way. That's how we find out. Not in any official patch notes, not in a survival guide you put out a couple of weeks ago where you could have mentioned this stuff. Nope, we have to find out ourselves. We have to look puzzled and stupid and confused. We have to have people going to all kinds of sources, and ultimately it's really down to Twitter to find this stuff out. It's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. But again, it's mostly negative changes. The changes to Mythic Plus, the freehold pig spawning in a random location, the additional buffs to damage that certain bosses do, all unannounced. So people are surprised, caught unaware. Perhaps it depleted your key unnecessarily. And also the deleting of keystones and the prevention of this stuff going on. I started this video by apologizing to Blizzard, and I will always do that if I make a mistake. But Blizzard's making so many mistakes. So many mistakes. And they don't seem to be learning. They don't seem to be changing. As I said, it was 2 months ago that we had this very same discussion. And here we are 2 months later after being told it's a top priority for communication, where you're releasing patches, you're making changes that are important changes that affect your players in a big way. And you're still concealing it. It makes you look unprofessional. It makes you look like you're lost. It makes you look like you're confused. I'm talking to Blizzard here. It makes you look like you are really not sure what direction you're trying to go with BFA or what the best decision is. And you're haphazardly making really sad, stupid mistakes that I would expect from an intern. I would expect an intern to say, oops, I forgot to put in the artifact knowledge change. That's not good enough. It's not, and it's got to stop, because all you're doing is keeping people further away. Because the people who have unsubbed waiting for BFA to get better, and I guarantee you they're listening to this right now, are just laughing, and they're absolutely not going to come back, because week on week, people like myself and other content creators have no choice but to announce this stuff, and we don't want to do it. We don't want to do it. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.